I never really stopped using film in the past. There've always been cameras around the house, but weirdly, it was when I got the chance to buy a DSLR for a very good price a few years ago that I started getting serious about film photography. Weirdly enough, I shall explain. I started using the old manual lenses that were lying around the house by putting them on the DSLR. And then in the meantime, I decided that I was going to go right back to first principles and try to forget everything that I thought that I knew about photography. So I got myself a set of the discs from the National Geographic Great Courses series, and I did the photography course. So it was putting a Pentax Takamine lens on a Canon digital camera that really got me back into film with a vengeance, because that lens made me want to own the camera that the lens was made for, the Spotmatic F. So I pretended that none of our existing film cameras would do, and I got a Spotmatic for myself, and that was it. I was completely captured by film again. So next slide, please, Alan. While all this was going on, film started undergoing a bit of a renaissance. And there are lots of new film stocks being produced. Most of the big names are chopping their product lines about and discontinuing lots of film that are well loved by users. But also new films are also appearing as well. So much so that there's one particular retailer in the UK that talks about the availability of over 200 different film stocks, which is quite amazing. I don't think probably there was ever that, even at the height of film, I wouldn't have thought. The other indicator is that there's a finite supply of used cameras, and prices are going up, which kind of indicates that demand is rising. So the next slide, please. And so there's a new generation of film photographers. I met this guy a couple of weekends ago in Lancaster, proudly brandishing his brand new to him Canon AE1 program, shooting his very first roll of film, which is great. But then the question that a lot of people who shot film in the past always ask is, but what do you do with the film when you've done it? Does anyone still develop it? So next slide, please. So you can still do the traditional thing. You can get a lab or a high street shop to develop and print the images, or you can develop and print your own photos at home. Otherwise, you can do the digital and traditional hybrid. Next slide, please, Alan. Whereby you can get the lab to develop and scan your images, and they're delivered to you by a download link or on a disk or on a memory stick. Alternatively, you can get the lab to develop the images and you scan them yourself if you have a scanner, or you can develop your own images like people did in the past, but now you can scan them and treat them as digital files, or of course you can print them yourself as well if you're ever interested in getting into darkroom stuff. And next slide, please, Alan. But home development, contrary to what a lot of people think, is actually really easy. It's cheaper than most people imagine it might be. And for developing, you don't need a darkroom. The only thing you need to do in the dark is to get the film into the developing tank. Everything else is done in the light. And we do it in our kitchen without any problems at all. So the next slide, please, Alan. So the simple kit, very basic kit for starting, is some plastic measuring jugs, a thermometer, a developing tank and reel, a dark bag, a timer, pair of scissors, a few clothes pegs, and the chemistry, and of course water. The next one, please, Alan. A little bit about the chemistry. Black and white and color processes use different chemicals and procedures. And it's generally best to start with black and white, although colour is actually very simple. I shocked myself when I discovered how easy colour is. So I'm not going to be giving any chemistry lessons, but all you need to know is that for black and white, there are three basic chemical reactions that need to take place. There's development, and you can buy or make your own product for that. You need to stop the development, and again, you can buy a product to use that, or you can just use tap water. And then there's fixing, where you buy or make your own. Most people buy it, very few people make their own, but it is possible. So the next one, please. Different black and white films require different times depending on the ISO used and the developer that you're using. There are thousands of possible permutations, but the internet, thankfully, is absolutely awash with information about this. And probably the biggest resource is the massive dev chart, which is enormous. And there's data on there from all the manufacturers and users, literally tens of thousands of different times. And you can do weird things with film that it was never designed to do using that chart. So that's a really useful resource. And again, please, Alan. So now we start to get a little bit unconventional. Someone I know had a serious asthma attack and had to go to hospital as a result of exposure to some developing chemicals a couple of years ago. And it made me wonder whether there was a safer alternative that was also better for the environment. So I did a little bit of research, myself and Misha, and we discovered Caffenol. And Caffenol was the result of a project on the technical photography course at the Rochester Institute of Technology. And a paper was written in 1995 about it, although there is a suggestion that something similar was experimented with during World War II. But during the first lockdown, we experimented with Caffenol and got excellent results right from the very, very first try. And so the next one, please, Alan. And it's just stuff you find lying around the house. So for a 35mm roll of film, 20 grams of the cheapest, nastiest instant coffee you can find. And they say the worse, the better. And so the coffee is a developing agent. The active ingredient isn't caffeine, it's caffeic acid, which is an element which is found in hundreds of different plants in various concentrations. I think one of the strongest ones is star anise, but that would work out very expensive, I think, if you were going to be using that for developing film. So you need 32 grams of washing soda. So sodium carbonate washing soda is there to make the solution alkaline, and that's the thing that activates the developing agents. Vitamin C powder, that's the second developing agent. When it's combined with coffee, the two add up to kind of greater than the sum of their parts from a developing point of view. And vitamin C improves contrast, it reduces the developing time, and it helps to prevent the film from fogging. You can just use coffee, but the vitamin C is kind of a bit of a booster. It makes the whole process go a lot better. And then you need a little bit of, we use table salt, but bromide is supposed to be the best stuff to use. We've got some bromide, we haven't tried it yet. And that's there to prevent fogging again, and it helps hold back the reaction to slow it down a little bit for fast films. And the next one, please, Alan. So we'd been using Caffenol for a little while, and it was great, interesting, something fun to talk about and do when we were locked in the house. And our son-in-law worked for an independent coffee importer and roaster in the east of England, and I thought it would be great if he could persuade his company to allow us to take some shots and develop them in Caffenol so that they could then be used to promote the business. And of course, we'd have to use high quality coffee to make the developer with. Unfortunately, Jamie, our son-in-law, was made redundant because of COVID, so the whole idea was mothballed. And again, please, Alan. However, this summer, the Baristanol project, which is what we call it, was revived. And again, Alan. So the way forward seemed quite simple. Do a little research and find a recipe to make a developer with fresh, high quality Arabica coffee beans. So the research began. And of course, we went to the internet, and everyone knows that everything on the internet is true. And we were coming up with, Alan, please, if you would, comments like this. You can't do it with ground coffee. You can't do it with real coffee. It has to be instant, and all of this stuff. So, and again, please, Alan. I quite like a challenge. It's one of the things I do a lot with photography. Is I like to give myself kind of what I call creative constraint. Where I set myself problems and put myself in a tight box and try and see what I can come up with. So we decided we were going to prove the concept with using cheap Arabica coffee beans. As it happens, we buy film in 30-meter bulk rolls, so it's very easy to make a short roll of just a few exposures to do quick tests with without wasting a lot of expensive film. So our first try was the strongest cup of coffee we'd ever made, 90 grams of fresh ground coffee, which is 10 espressos. And the rest of the recipe remained the same as we usually do. And the first try was successful. So booyah sucks internet, you're all wrong. And again, Alan, please. So this is the first image that we developed in Baristanol. And as with all of the photos you're seeing from now on, I don't claim any amazing artistic content here. It's just a shot to prove that the thing works. So excuse the rather prosaic still life there. So we've proven the concept, but we needed to do some more tests. So I shot a roll of 36 identical frames from a tripod. And then I was able to use 3 or 4 exposures to develop using different concentrations of coffee. Please, Alan. So if we decided at a later time to use a different kind of coffee, there may be different results, because obviously coffee is a natural product, and there are natural variations between different types and the way it's been treated by the roaster. So with those different results, we might be able to adjust the recipe to accommodate any differences. So we developed coffee at 5 different concentrations, and going from a 50% of the original strength up to 150% of the original strength. So 150% is seriously strong coffee. And mixing that was like, well, Misha did the mixing. It was like making mud pies. It was extraordinarily concentrated stuff. Because we're limited to the amount of water we can put into the tank. So the more coffee you put in, the less room you've got for the water. So it becomes thicker and thicker as you go. But it turns out that, as it happens, the test we did, the very first stab at it, we got things about right with good results. So if you move on, please, Alan. We then decided to use some proper beans, some expensive ones, and using that same recipe. So I'll just leave you now with a few images from that first roll of film developed with our Baristanol recipe. And when we come to them, that'll be the end of the presentation.